Hello, everyone. Um, Tonight is a very sensitive topic for me. I'll be sharing my own story, brought on by a settlement that's been reached inside of a class action lawsuit against the Fulton County Women's Detention Center. To begin with, I'm going to share with you um, a video that I had made about a year ago that shares it's about a 7 minute long video. It shares my story, and then we're going to cut to the article about Bill Rankin that was published less than 24 hours ago. We're going to have a conversation about the lack of justice when it comes to people with mental health. Hey, my name is Shantae McLaughlin. Today, we're in the year 2021. We survived a lot during 2020. However, I just wanted to share with you a few minutes of my past. So, I live with bipolar 2 with psychosis. So, what that means is I go from managing multi-million dollar accounts to literally being the person who is homeless, who sleeps on the streets. The person you see and you don't see because you don't want to see it. And a couple of years ago, here in East Point, a lot of you know a very popular sports bar. And I was a media buyer for it. It was all over the radio. And I had just stopped working for one of the hip hop stations here in Atlanta. And I was Cub Scout secretary. I was in a seemingly healthy, happy relationship. And my doctor said, I was actually advocating with an organization called Mothers Advocating for Mental Illness. And I actually was in the process of going to Ferguson to protest. And my doctor said, you know what? You're too high functioning and you no longer need your medication. At the time, I was classified as schizophrenic. When I stopped taking my medication, I present as schizophrenic. And so she took me off my medicine. Very quickly, I decomposed. What that looks like is fast forward to 6 months to a year, and I was pregnant, going to jail, sleeping on the streets, institutionalized. My son, my oldest son, had to go live with my mother, and here I am with a college degree, homeless, sleeping on the streets. Now, a lot will be said. Like, people may say she did drugs. I never did drugs. Well, let me take that back. Smoked marijuana maybe 2 or 3 times in college as a freshman. Hated it. Just totally didn't like it. It made me sick. I didn't like the taste in my mouth. I didn't like anything about it. Other than that, I've never been exposed to any other drug. I attended Narcotics Anonymous for 5 years because I didn't have insurance. And in not having insurance, I knew that with my mental health, I was getting better by just sitting in a group format and attending meetings. So fast forward again, I got incarcerated in 2016 for criminal trespassing, disorderly conduct, and obstruction of justice. Well, actually, criminal trespassing and disorderly conduct. I was never Mirandized. I was housed at Clayton County. When it was time to go to court, I asked the officer if he read me my Miranda rights. And he said no, he didn't even know what the Miranda rights were to read them to me. And they sent me back to my cell. I was pregnant. I was 2 centimeters dilated in August. They sent me back to my cell with no medication because I was off my mental health meds. Like I said, it had been over a year. And they threw in a disorderly conduct charge. after they sent me back to my cell. Fulton County picked me up, took me to the Fulton County Women's Detention Center. While at the Fulton County Women's Detention Center for 9 months, they did all types of things, one of which was shackling me when it was time for me to give birth, not giving me hot meals. In 9 months, I didn't see the outside world one time, except for when being transported to and from court, where they wouldn't take me to court. They put me into another holding cell and leave me there. And sometimes they leave me in my cell for 4 and 5 weeks with no interaction with others. One time I was so dehydrated, I had to use my maxi pad box for something to be able to attain water. And while incarcerated, I delivered triplets: Gregory Sterling McLaughlin, Malcolm Aaron McLaughlin, and Melina Olivia McLaughlin. I named them, I held them for 2 days, and then they transported me back to the cell. They refused to give Gregory to my mother because she was about to have open heart surgery, and they wouldn't release him to her best friend because she wasn't family. However, they sent him to a former DFACS caseworker, and they tried to encourage her to adopt him. And fast forward a little more, after that 9 months, they sent me to Georgia Regional for another 9 months to stabilize me. While at Georgia Regional, I found out that I was facing 20 years in prison for charges that weren't mine. And I didn't have a public defender or a lawyer. The first public defender they gave me told me that he wasn't my public defender. I never had a phone call. The second public defender said that he wasn't my public defender, and he gave me a third number. The third person called the quote unquote victim and said, "There's no victim in this case. Your charges have been dead docketed." Georgia Regional refused to transport me to court because I wouldn't take a plea deal. They said, "You were homeless, so you must have committed these charges." And I said, "They're not my charges. I didn't commit the crime." And so they said they wouldn't transport me because I didn't understand the severity of the situation. So at the end of my charges being dead docketed in Fulton County, they said, and by the way, you never delivered triplets. You only gave birth to one child. Since you were delusional, you hallucinated having 3 babies. So I've been on a campaign to find my other 2 children, which looks like me running for East Point Ward B at Large City Council. I've had conversations with commissioners. I've had conversations with United Nations, with Polaris, the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the GBI, and nothing's happened. So the jail that I was housed in is the Fulton County Women's Detention Center. There's a class action lawsuit for over 200 cases of cruel and inhumane treatment to minority women of color. I've talked to the Georgia Advocacy Office, the Southern Center for Human Rights, you name it, I've talked to them, and nothing's happened to date. So I'm standing up for something. I'm committed to getting my children back because I am a mother before I'm anything else. And after that, I'm a businesswoman, and I'm a public policy advocate. And I am running for City Council, Ward B at Large. I am Shantae McLaughlin. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope that you can help me find my children, or that you come out and vote. Share this story with 5 other people. Request that they share it with 5 other people. You can find out more information at change.org/Shantae, CHANTAYE 1979. Thank you. So needless to say, I'm not running for city council. That was last year. And, my children are 5 years old. Gregory turned 5 on November 19, 2016. And there's a couple of other things that I'll share about that. A couple of discrepancies. We did that video in about 2 or 3 takes. And I'm going to share this article. And then I'm going to talk about those discrepancies and talk about a few things that were really significant that I left out. So, 1 second. So in the last 24 hours, this article was published by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And it says, settlement reached in suit over repulsive Fulton jail conditions. And it is written by Bill Rankin of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. A federal judge has approved the settlement that ends litigation that showed mentally ill women were being detained in squalid conditions at the South Fulton jail. Hold on, it's not sharing yet. Hold on. There we go. U.S. District Judge Billy Ray, who said at the close of one court hearing he found the conditions repulsive, recently signed an agreement that also calls for the county to pay $1.2 million in legal fees and costs to the attorneys who filed the lawsuit 3 years ago. This settlement should improve the lives of people with serious mental illness who are held in the South Fulton jail, said Atia Holly, deputy director of the Southern Center for Human Rights in Atlanta. But litigation is not the solution to issues plaguing the jail, Holly added. To avoid needless suffering, we must combat our impulse to charge and jail the mentally ill. The Southern Center litigated the case with the Georgia Advocacy Office and Kaplan Cobb, an Atlanta law firm. The lawsuit said women with serious mental illnesses were held in isolation 23 hours a day. It also included photographs that showed standing toilet water on the floor, a trail of urine under a cell door, bloody clothes in living areas, and feces and blood smeared on the walls. The settlement calls for the women to be allowed out of their cells 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. They also will have access to meaningful therapeutic activities and be provided personal hygiene items, clean drinking water, and a sufficient supply of clean clothing and underwear. Training will also be given to the correctional staff for overseeing the mentally ill. In a statement, one of the plaintiffs says she hopes the settlement will ensure women will be treated more humanely. Identified only by the initials JN, she said women at the jail are enjoying the therapeutic activities such as coloring, yoga, music, and dancing. When I was in the jail a few years ago, when the jail was dirty and there was nothing to do, the living conditions hurt my mental health, JN said. I got so tired of being locked in a concrete room all day. It felt like being a bird in a cage that can't fly anymore. It felt like nobody cared about me. So, I share this to say some of the discrepancies were things like when I first went to jail, I went on criminal trespassing and disorderly conduct. There was one police officer who never Mirandized me. When I asked him, I pled per se. And although I was delusional, I knew that I wasn't Mirandized. And I asked him, did you Mirandize me? And he didn't know the Miranda rights. At first he said yes. I asked him to recite them, and he didn't know how to recite them. And then the judge began asking me lots of questions about if I knew any elected officials, questions about if I knew any gang members, questions about where I'd work, questions about what I looked like with weight on me, meaning because I was so thin, I hadn't had any medical care. And when I'm off my meds, I'm really thin. I'm about 125 pounds. So he was asking, well, if you're a little thicker, what would you look like? And he said, you're going to sit in jail for at least a year and you're going to have those babies in here. And I said, for criminal trespassing when I wasn't Mirandized? And I never received a phone call or anything. And so when they sent me back to my cell in Clayton County, and I'm going to get to Clayton County. So when they sent me back to my cell in Clayton County, what happened after that was about a week later, they threw in a obstruction of justice charge because there was this officer named Officer Peace who came in, grabbed me by my hair, and slammed me into a sofa. And when he did that, he snatched me out of my shoes and pushed me up against the car and handcuffed me as he drug me out the house. I was at one of my friend's houses. We've been trying to get my mental health medications because my doctor, which we're going to have that conversation too, Dr. Wynn at Grady had taken me off my meds. She said I was too high functioning and I did need mental health meds, although my diagnosis at the time was schizophrenia. And I said, I've never heard of anyone being diagnosed with schizophrenia who did not need their meds, and was told that by a doctor. And she said, you're too high functioning. And so, needless to say, when I stopped taking my meds, I go from managing multi-million-dollar accounts. The pictures in the video were actually taken at my nightclub that I was a partner in with someone from Bad Boys South, who managed Robert from making a band in Pensacola, Florida. Now, I didn't have the money to invest, so I had a team of investors. That is how I had my nightclub, and we subcontracted from a gentleman named Mario. And so I was the media buyer for the U-Bar. I worked at Streets 94.5. I left there to be media buyer for the U-Bar, and I managed his money at the door. He would say that I was his door manager. And I was Cub Scout secretary. And another correction was I was advocating with mothers, advocating for the mentally ill. Candida had just gotten arrested, Rachel Summerlin's daughter, because she lived with mental health and she was in psychosis standing in the middle of a pond. And the police tried to arrest her without a real reason. And she got paranoid, got scared, jumped in her car and hit an officer. And she's sitting in prison for 20 years right now because the officer broke their leg. And then we were advocating around Kimberly Gomez, who had a psychotic break online and threatened some people. And they charged her with terroristic threats, and they kicked down her door with her 5 children, who she kept saying they were trying to take my kids. They kept saying how gorgeous my kids were. Her kids were Asian and Black. And she kept saying they're trying to take my kids. And they ended up putting them in foster care briefly, but then her parents stepped in and got them. And then they released her, but they housed her for like 9 months without giving her any mental health meds in Cobb County. So I was advocating for those women. I had done a speaking engagement with, I think she's senator now, Erica Thomas, and with Miss Georgia. And then Remy Albatrawi. I was in a relationship and we were talking about marriage. And then one day he threatened to murder me. He said I was on social media too much and he didn't like me not taking my medicine. And so during that time, the only reason why I started seeing Dr. Wynn is because I actually was seeing Susan Gully. She was my therapist at Grady Hospital. Susan Gully referred me to Dr. Wynn because I wanted to know with my mental health meds if it was possible for me to get pregnant and have a safe pregnancy. And so Dr. Wynn, that was her specialty. And when she took me off my meds, after a while, I started breaking down more, hallucinating, being paranoid, having mass breakdowns on social media again. I see things that aren't there. I might see Joe Biden and think he's Barack Obama, although they look nothing alike. They aren't even the same race. But that's what my psychosis piece of my mental health does to me. So my diagnosis is bipolar 2 with psychosis, but I'm present. I'm present enough to know what's going on. So there was a time that I was arrested from the Highland Club. Once again, I never did drugs, cocaine, pills, anything like that. And so I was at the Highland Club and Teresa Ham had me arrested again. She kept having me arrested. And this time, my mother had one of the gentlemen on the bikes who used to ride by called her and said, your daughter's being arrested again. She talked to the police officer and asked him if I could just get an ultrasound. So he took me to Grady Hospital to get an ultrasound. I was about 5 or 6 months pregnant. And he asked me if I wanted him to wait for me. And I said, no, that's okay. I don't need you to wait on me. I'll be okay by myself. And they took my bag. They checked me in. I sat in a room for about 12 hours thinking that they were going to come and examine me. And then 2 orderlies came in. They grabbed me by my throat. They slammed me up against the hospital bed, and a girl shot me in the arm with something, and I don't know what she shot me with. And then I woke up on this floor, and on this floor, everybody was in like psychosis. It was a bunch of homeless people, and there was a guy that was about 3 feet away from me who kept exposing himself and telling me what I should do to his penis. And so they came around when the orderlies came around with this document. I hadn't had a shower. It was like being in jail. You get a bologna and bread sandwich with the Kool-Aid and the 2 cookies. And so when they asked me to sign this form, I voluntarily signed a form that said that I would voluntarily be willing to be used inside of medical research. And the other option was either you sign that form or you stay there until the police come again and you go to jail. So I signed the form. And when you got to the other side, it was like a day program. Like we did sand crafts, we did arts, there was a teacher that came in every day. And they made popcorn for us and snow cones and stuff like that. But they gave me Haldol, and I've never been prescribed Haldol, but my doctor, Dr. Wynn, was the one who prescribed it, and she sent it over from the doctor. Like, I was like, I'm not taking this. I need to see Dr. Wynn. She's my doctor. I take Geodon or Risperidol. Those are the meds that stabilize me. And they said, well, no, Dr. Wynn said that you take Haldol, and she wants you on Haldol, and she prescribed me Haldol while I was on this floor, where I'd signed off on a form saying I'd be willing to be used inside of medical research. While I was on that floor, there was a lady who was on the floor with me, who was also in jail with me. I kept making fun of her, so I hope I find her. She had a beard, and I was like, are you a transgender? And she was like, no, Shantae, I'm not. I was like, yes, you are. Look at that beard on your face. Who got you pregnant? And that was the thing. And when I was sitting in jail at Fulton County Women's Detention Center, she was there also. And she was the one who would give me cups so that I could have drinking water when they would shut off my water in the cell. So fast forward some more. When I got arrested, like I said, I got arrested in Clayton County for criminal trespassing and disorderly conduct. Then they threw an obstruction of justice with Officer Peace. After that, one day they came and picked me up, and I thought I was just being transported to another jail for criminal trespassing, or they were taking me to court. I didn't really know what was going on. I just thought they were transporting me somewhere. And they re-fingerprinted me. They didn't have any of my belongings. They said, don't worry about it. This is all you need. They had a purse. And I sat in jail. To back it up a little, when I was on that mentally ill floor, they did a sonogram and showed twins. And I called my mother every day from that floor. So although they did a sonogram and showed twins, there's nowhere in my medical records at Grady. The whole signature, the whole time, that month of me being there is nowhere in my medical records. And I was there. And I have proof that I was there that I'm not going to mention now. So fast forward to me sitting in jail at Clayton County, and then Fulton County Fulton County picking me up. Fulton County re-fingerprinted me. And there were a bunch of people around. There were just a bunch of officers around. And they were talking to me about cologne and just having random conversations with me. And so when they took me and arrested me, I thought I was sitting in jail for criminal trespassing. And come to find out, I gave birth. I was like almost 2 centimeters dilated in August. I gave birth November 19th. I sat in that cell. I couldn't close my legs. The babies were coming, and they just left me in the cell. They'd bring me out once a month for the doctor to do an old school exam where she put the two fingers in me and press it against my cervix. And then they took me to the hospital, and I couldn't close my legs when it was time to deliver. I was like, the baby is crowning. I can feel the baby coming. And so handcuffed me to the they handcuffed me to the wheelchair. Um, they actually had to bring someone in with the hospital gurney, and it took two of them. They had to pull me to even get me out the bed, and then they were trying to figure out if they could transport me in a car or if they could transport me in a van because my legs wouldn't close. Baby was coming, and so they were literally pulling me from one side to get me in, and somebody else was pushing me because I couldn't get in on my own. And then when I got out, they handcuffed me, my hands and my feet to the hospital chair, and they wheeled me through. And then I had on a hospital gown, and this was on the 17th, and they said she's not ready to deliver. Then they took me back to jail for the 18th. Then they brought me back on the 19th. And I remember this lady there was a thin lady with a flippy hair, and she ran up and down the hallway to make sure it was secure. And then there started being 5 to 6 officers in the room with me, male and female. And one of the officers was eating Popeye's chicken, and she was sitting there laughing and talking, and the male officers were looking between my legs as I delivered. And Director Rhonda Scott Grady, she heard me screaming. She was like, and I don't know, she could have been on my side or not, but she was like, you need to unshackle her. And they said that I stabbed someone. And she was like, I don't care what her crime is. You can't have her shackled like that. What's she gonna do? Run? She's giving birth. And but before she came in, they were trying to force me to get a C-section. They didn't give me any medication. They gave me Benadryl. And I just remember passing out and waking up and passing out and waking up. And I kept saying, God, please don't let me die like this. Because when they were transporting me through the hospital, they were transporting me past the morgue. There's an area in Grady Hospital in the basement where it's a cell, and it's a cell for women. And they have all of the women, because the Fulton County Women's Detention Center is a holding tank for all of the counties. It says Fulton County, but it's DeKalb County, it's Fulton County, it's Gwinnett County, it's all of the counties. They hold their females in this one nasty jail. And so when there's a desk, and there's like 3 cells with a glass window. And one time I had on like a blue uniform, one time I had on orange uniform, one time I had on a pink stripe uniform, because they're for the different counties, and they have you dress out depending on which county you're in. And so I delivered November 19th, and I remember I kept singing Sam Cooke because I was delusional, and I just kept singing Sam Cooke songs. And I delivered Gregory right away. And then right after Gregory, Malcolm came out. And then I thought I had to go to the bathroom. I thought I was done pushing. And I was like, I'm done. And they're like, you need to push. I was like, I need to go to the bathroom. They're like, no, you need to push. I was like, I need to go to the bathroom. They're like, you need to push. I was like, I need to go to the bathroom. And I actually would say, I need to take a crap. And so I pushed, and Melina came out. And so Gregory, Malcolm, and Melina came out. Melina came from me thinking that Barack Obama was my dad, and Malia was coming, and they had landed on the ceiling. On the building. Malcolm came from me thinking that we were in the Black Lives Matter movement. This is 5 years ago, and we were back in civil rights era. And so I named him Malcolm and Aaron. There was a guy named Aaron with a cut on his face that I liked to smoke cigarettes and cigars with when I was pregnant, who was one of Rodney's friends, tall, thin guy. And Melina, her middle name is Olivia, from my mother, whose middle name is Olivia, and Olivia Taylor. Gregory's name came from my mom's ex, who was like my dad for the first couple of years of my life before my father and my mother got back together. And his name was Gregory Slay, and he died in my 20s. And Gregory's middle name is Sterling, after my Uncle Cleet, who always has had my back. So there's Gregory Sterling, Malcolm Aaron, and Melina Olivia. And that's where the names came from. And they after I gave birth, after 2 days, I couldn't close my legs, I couldn't walk. They stitched me with no medication other than Benadryl. They gave me an epidural. Like in my records, it says Benadryl, not morphine. They said I was denying medication, so they couldn't give me any pain pills. And so I just, like I said, I remember passing out and waking up and just praying to God not to let me die like that. And after that, they parked the van on like the helicopter landing pad. It was pristine. It was 100% white as snow, the concrete. And there was a van. And there was an officer who had 11 children who was driving the van, and his partner. And he was talking about how his kids had just eaten fish sticks and mashed potatoes and how he really needed this. And I remember crawling because I couldn't walk. They had me handcuffed, and I couldn't close my legs and I couldn't walk. So I literally crawled when they took me out of the wheelchair to the van. Um, and that's how I got on the van, as I crawled across the ground, handcuffed. And and after that, I was back in an area. There were 5 of us women who were pregnant total. One lady had short hair. She had a tattoo on her neck. She was the first one to say, she brought me a magazine with prints on the cover. She was the first one to say that her children were missing. And I just thought they were lost in defects or something, because she was there and she was frustrated. She was like, I can't find my kids. Then the second woman had on a green jumpsuit too. She's the one that said that that would bring me the water. And she's the one that was on the homeless floor with me, who had the beard and mustache. And she said the same thing, that her kids are missing. And I remember saying, y'all keep talking about all these damn kids being missing. Y'all act like they're Asian or African. Ain't nobody stealing our kids. If they want to steal our kids, they could go to DFAS. And then there was me. And then there was, wait a minute, there might have been, who's the fourth one? There's a fourth one. She was at Grady. And I kept asking her if she had a fake stomach. And then the fifth one was this girl from Texas who had real pretty braids in her hair. And she had the footprints of her baby, but she didn't have her baby, singular. But they set me up for her to hit me with handcuffs. Like I noticed when they handcuffed all of us together, and they gave her a pair of handcuffs just in her hand. And so she slapped me across the face with them as soon as we made it into the van. And then I was off medicine. I pulled the 2 girls and I jumped on her. And I was going to try to choke her with the chain, because they put us in a jet black van, her with handcuffs in her hand, and with the assignment to hit me across the face and to beat me with the handcuffs. And so when we got, she started screaming and stuff, and then they came and pulled us out. And this is all in November, December. I didn't get transported. I didn't get any mental health meds until June. I didn't get hot meals. Around
May they started sending some hot meals instead of just bologna and bread or peanut butter and bread. And it looked like someone spit on it. It looked like, it looked like there were feces in it. It looked like there were bugs in it. And so I kept refusing to eat the food because, there were brown things in it that looked like insects. And so the day before they transported me to Georgia Regional, they tried to force me to get an IUD 5 times. That's birth control, where they go inside of, um, I believe, your uterus, and it's like a little clip that stops you from getting pregnant. And when I did not decline that, they said, "Well, your doctor ordered it." I said, "My doctor can't order birth control," but some kind of way I was in and out of coherency, so I knew my rights, and I was like, my doctor can't force birth control on me." And they said, "But your doctor ordered this," and I said, "Well, my doctor can't order birth control." And so they left me alone about the birth control, and they transported me to Georgia Regional. And when I got to Georgia Regional, Dr. Farr said, "You need to take a plea deal." I said, "Plea deal for what? Y'all have been housing me for almost 2 years on criminal trespass, and why do I need to take a plea deal?" And she said, "You don't understand the severity of your charges. You're facing 20 years in prison." I said, 20 years for what? And they said, "For aggravated assault, for terroristic threats, and for possession of a knife and the commencement of a felony." And I said, "Those aren't my charges." She said, "Well, you were homeless and you live with mental health, so they must be your charges. So just take the plea deal. It's only 5 years." And when I refused to take the plea deal, they'd give me my medication to stabilize me, Dr. Basir, but they refused to transport me to court for Gregory. At the time, I didn't know that Malcolm and Molina were missing. They just said, "Well, you're not fit to stand trial, so we're not going to transport you to court." Now, problem with this too is when I left the jail and they transferred me to Georgia Regional, because of the HIPAA laws, they didn't have to tell my defects caseworker. So my defects caseworker thought that I went home. She didn't know where I was. And the only reason why I found her and I got my son before my rights were terminated is because she left her number with my mother. The reason why my mother didn't have him is because they refused to release him to my mother because she was having heart surgery, to her best friend, to my stepdad, to JD, to Pretty Ricky, to Alvar, to any of them. They wouldn't release my son. Um, they said they weren't family. But they released him to a couple who was European or Caucasian. They may not be European, but they were Caucasian. And they said, Sharon Mulkey said, you know, they wanted us to adopt, and we figured that he already had enough against him being in the foster care system. Last thing he needed was to be a little black boy with a white mom picking him up from school and trying to explain that. So because of that, because he's a black kid, we didn't want to adopt him. And then Jennifer Riley stepped in, single black mom, former military, and she tried to adopt. And that looked like when I got released from Georgia Regional, this is after 2 years between jail and Georgia Regional, 2 years for criminal trespassing. Um, at the end of the 2 years, they said, by the way, your charge has been dead docketed, which means um, you're free to go home. And there's no victim in this crime. There's no victim. So we don't, like, the third attorney was like, "There's no victim." And so I went home. They were trying to get me to go to a group home. Um, Thankful to Making a Way, to Liz for allowing me to go to Making a Way for the third or fourth time. Some people question my loyalty. My loyalty lies in the fact, or disloyalty, let me say it like that, lies in the fact that I don't think that me working for free to have a roof over my head, or an organization getting $10,000 for my story, or when it was time for someone to advocate for me to get paid, it looking like $400 every 2 weeks. And the thought of, "I'll write a letter so that the judge can let your child stay here at a transitional housing place with you." Yeah, I don't think that's really fair. And so me being vocal about it If it cost me friendships, then guess what? Y'all probably weren't my friends to begin with. So I say it like that. Um, and when I was released from jail, 2 months after being released, I was Rob Pitts, the chairman of Fulton County Commissioner's campaign manager assistant on paper. I think Helen's his manager on paper, but Liz ran his campaign, and I was her assistant. I have pictures and documentation to prove it. And then when we were working Shalice Still Youngs, I met Commissioner Natalie Hall, and she knows the story too. I wrote her about a year and a half ago, and she told me she'd be looking into it, and she just hadn't had time to look into it, and nothing's happened. One of my friends, Cordelia, her brother Sebastian works with the United Nations out of Singapore, and he'd never heard of Georgia. He's German, but he looked into it and told me that this isn't the area that he practices, and for me to contact Polaris. Polaris couldn't handle it because they don't handle missing children. They handle sex trafficked children, just not missing children. And so they refer me to the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, who never returned my call. The GBI never returned my call. Governor Kemp's office never returned my call. So I created a change.org petition, and to clarify there, there's been a lot said. Daryl Peak is the first one to give me a free interview. When I interviewed with the DNZ family, I paid for those interviews and for those write-ups. I paid a lot of money, in fact, almost $10,000. And then I ran for city council and put almost $20,000 into that. While I was running for city council in East Point, I went through my business bank got closed because when I was running, someone said, well, I wouldn't say that I had problems with my electric bill. Well, the other part is my bank accounts were frozen for 60, almost 90 days because I paid my Discover card from my business bank account, and they said it looked fraudulent, and they froze my bank account, so I couldn't pay any bills. I almost went bankrupt. I went from a 700 credit score to one that was non-existent almost because I had no access to capital for a while, other than what funds came in from the campaign. And I'm still paying my team from there. And that's a whole nother subject. But I ran for office to kind of figure out the background of how it really works, and who does what they say they're going to do and who really doesn't. And it's been Gregory's 5 years old. Y'all have seen him running around, and I managed to get him back, although it was a fight. And at some point during the reunification process, they actually were going to have me pay child support during the reunification process. I had to show that at the next court hearing, I'd be reunified, and if it wasn't going to happen, I was going to have to start paying child support. Securing resources for consumers was the first to give me a real job, pay me a decent, livable wage where I could take care of my kids and get my kids back. And I'm grateful. Bryce was with my mother. I hadn't talked to him in over a year. He really didn't know where I was or what was going on with me. And this is the system. The system is designed to take your kids away. And, my kids could be in, we have family therapy. All three of them are therapists. Gregory has behavioral issues. Bryce has underlying anger issues. I have all types of issues, and they show up in different ways. I sometimes wonder if I have PTSD. I went and asked my therapist about PTSD, and I got an assessment. And the assessor said that she asked the question of why my story hadn't been looked into. And so they started ordering all of my records to see, and reaching out to different people to see the conversations. Like, did she have this conversation with you? And guess what? most of those records have not come in. They keep requesting them and they haven't come in. I've requested my jail records, haven't gotten them, and these are things that I am constitutionally bound that are my right. I have the right to know about my jail records, what's in my records. I have the right to know what's in my medical records without anything being um, hidden from my medical records. And they haven't released to me my full medical records yet. Um, I just want to find my kids. I talked to NAN, National Action Network. They said this would be a federal case, civil rights violation. I talked to over 60 attorneys. Most wouldn't touch it because of my mental health. Um, um, Devin Orland from the Georgia Advocacy Office, the first time that we spoke, she was like, "Are you okay? Believe you. And are you okay?" And um, most of the days I am okay. And then there's some days where I'm not that okay. And it's hard to say I'm not that okay because I have missing children that I know are alive. And some people can hear that and some people can't. And yeah. So to show support, I'm not gonna prolong this show. This is show support. You can go to my change.org petition. It is Shantae, spelled like my first name, CHA, change.org/Shantae 1979. That's CHANTAYE 1979. There's other conversations that could be had, like how they had me sign off on a form at Georgia Regional to say that I voluntarily committed myself to a forensic unit. I said, well, if I voluntarily committed myself, does that mean that I can voluntarily leave? And they're like, no, you can't leave, but we just need to cover our bases. There's things that could be said, like how Clayton County had a warrant out for my arrest because they thought that I had posted bond and left, and they didn't realize that Fulton County had picked me up and charged me with a whole new set of charges, and that's where I was the whole time. There's something that could be said about them not transporting me to court because they said that I wasn't fit to be a mother and I'd never be a mother again. And they told my defense attorney, Nicole Johnson, this. There's something that could be said about my baby daddy and how I even got pregnant, hallucinating and delusional, and with him being the, what was his title? Bachelor of the Year for the Atlanta magazine. And him feeling like he could heal me with horses and with nature. And I'm always torn between it. Was that love or was that just some BS to have sex? And but there was a lot that could be said in this case. Like right now, a lot could be said. During that time, his ranch caught on fire. Where to get to the old house, it was a small house. You had to walk. I mean, it's like a mile and a half, 2 miles before you could get to the house. So I don't know who caught his house on fire, but I know while I was laying in a cell in Clayton County, about 3 weeks in to the jail process, I watched him on the news being arrested for horses being found on his property that were dead by PETA, and PETA were coming after him. And for the most part, while I was incarcerated, so was he. And so I don't know what this was really about. They even asked me who the father of my children were, and I told them. And I know they didn't contact him until later on, and they were going to adopt Gregory without making him take a paternity test. And this is the last thing that I'll share. I found out that when your parental rights are terminated, so one, people don't realize when your parental rights are terminated, you can't get them back. And two, when your parental rights are terminated, the Department of Treasury is who pays for that. So when we send our kids, when our kids go to foster care and detention centers and all of that other stuff, or we get incarcerated and and we lose our children, which right now women are being incarcerated at a rate higher than men statistically. When this happens, the Department of Treasury, for some strange reason, pays for this. So, anywho, that's all I got tonight, y'all. I decided with this class action lawsuit being settled to share my own story, to share my story of the lack of justice. If you know of anyone else whose children have been trafficked out of their jail, please reach out. My email is shantae1979@gmail.com, and my change.org petition is change.org/Shantae1979. Thank you and have a good night.
Like this.